Next is a final deep dive, which is the last deep dive of the entire of today's day. It brings us to a theme that's becoming increasingly urgent, that is heat resilience and sustainable cooling. With the rising temperatures, which is already affecting productivity, health, and energy demand, this session explores how India can adopt cooling solutions that are both sustainable and accessible. Even with the rising temperatures, it's posing a resilience challenge as well as a climate opportunity, but the question yet remains around the scale of demand, affordability, and the investable models that can be looked at. To discuss this, I now call upon Bhavya from IIC to take us through this thematic deep dive.
Thank you, Divya, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here to talk about something that is becoming increasingly relevant to how we live and work, sustainable cooling. Every summer, Indian cities are breaking new heat records. Urban heat waves are lasting longer, affecting not just comfort but also health, food supply, and productivity. Building heat resilience ensures that our homes, schools, hospitals, and workplaces remain livable and safe is no longer an option, it's central to how we live and invest for the future. And what's really exciting is that this isn't just an environmental issue, it's also a massive investment opportunity, close to USD $1.5 trillion, with strong adoption co-benefits. Sustainable cooling spans a broad solution spectrum from space cooling in commercial and residential areas to cold chain refrigeration to safeguard food and medicines, to resilience focused measures to protect communities and new low emission technologies that drive innovation. The real challenge and opportunity lies in moving from pilot project to large scale adoption. The big question is how do we make cooling more affordable, effective, efficient, and accessible for everyone? Because in a country like ours, cooling isn't about comfort, it's about food security, health, and productivity again. It's about ensuring that our growth remains both low carbon and heat resilient even as temperature continue to rise. Now I call upon Megha from CPI to share her view on this deep dive. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhavya. Thank you. Meeting this growing demand from cooling sustainably will require action on multiple fronts. We have market, innovation, and policy factors at play, and from innovative business models and technologies to supportive policies and financing frameworks. Everything will play a critical part in developing this ecosystem that we will require for sustainable cooling. From our research, one of the insights that came out was that business models are as critical as technology choices when it comes to sustainable cooling. Approaches like cooling as a service, leasing, and shared cooling infrastructure are emerging ways to make efficient cooling affordable as well as scalable. These can help overcome high upfront costs, which are often a key barrier to adoption of efficient and low-carbon cooling solutions. Technology and innovation are also at play and forming a very dynamic ecosystem where we have a focus on low-carbon technology and also energy-efficient technology for cooling solutions. Some of the areas that are emerging, especially from an R&D focus, are low global warming potential refrigerants and also phase change materials. Heat resilience and materials for heat resilience as well as some AI heat mapping technologies are also things that are coming up. The sustainable cooling ecosystem is anchored by the India Cooling Action Plan from a policy perspective, and there are also energy efficiency standards as well as energy efficiency standards as well as government procurement policies in place which can act as enablers from a policy perspective. Cooling is an area that has very strong co-benefits both from a mitigation as well as adaptation perspective and is a very promising and upcoming area in the climate ecosystem. With this, I'd like to hand it over to the IIC team. Thank you.
Thank you, Megha, for these insights. So really, sustainable cooling sits at the intersection of technology, finance, and policy innovation. It's a huge opportunity for us to not only reduce emission, but also to build more resilient, productive, and climate smart India. And on that note, the stage is set for our next conversation, bringing together a powerful cross section of voices from technology innovators and multilateral experts to investors shaping the next wave of climate adaptation solutions. We are pleased to have with us Siddharth Gupta, Director and CFO Smart Joules, Prasanna Sriram, Country Lead, Terwillinger Center for Innovation in Shelter, India Habitat for Humanity, Benjamin Hickman, Program Manager, Climate Change Division at UNEP India, and Priyanka, Director, Capital Transformation at Transition VC. Moderating these discussions is Shravan Shankar, co-founder, Climic. I'd like the audience to give a huge round of applause for them. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we are rounding up this conference with the coolest session. So, but yeah, I know it's obviously end of long 2 days, but we have an amazing panel here. So I'm really looking forward to actually having this discussion. I think one of the things which really stood out from the presentation you just saw right now is that cooling is broad, cooling is it's a diverse sector. And we have 4 very different people who kind of, just give me 1 second, I gotta check this out. Yeah, so we have 4 very different stakeholders right across this session sitting here. And you're gonna get a big diversity of perspectives, of insights, and of things that are actually needed for the space. So without further ado, I'm going to start with asking each and every one of them to briefly introduce yourself, your organization, and what are the areas around this whole cooling, thermal comfort universe that you prioritize and focus on. Let's be quick about it because we'll spend the next further questions unpacking that. Benjamin, would you like to start? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you and good afternoon, everyone. So I'm here on behalf of United Nations Environment Programme, which I hope you've heard of, but if you haven't, we're the environmental authority within the UN system. And really since the days of the Montreal Protocol, UNEP's been prioritizing action on sustainable cooling and has also been one of the lead organizations behind the implementation of that plan within countries. But cooling is extended way beyond refrigerants, and now UNEP has programs and is working with governments on cold chain, on district cooling, on passive cooling design in buildings, air conditioning, fans, district cooling, and even how we cool down our cities through nature and heat-resilient urban design. And in India, we have a program that's covering all of those areas, and different parts of the team within UNEP focused on that.
Super, thank you. Prasanna, what about you? Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I am with the Terwilliger Center for Innovation in Shelter. I currently lead the country program. Terwilliger Center is a market development wing of Habitat for Humanity International. We are a global nonprofit working on housing. And in India, we focus on multiple verticals, primarily providing access to affordable materials and technology that are relevant for low-income households. And how do we create that pipeline and channel for through market-based channels. And second area of work that we do is on housing finance, access to housing finance for low-income families. And finally, we look at innovation and entrepreneurship, primarily working with startups and growing businesses that can disrupt the construction ecosystem and how built environment is changing today. And in the context of the panel today, we primarily focus on thermal comfort. Again, with a specific focus on low-income households, where we are talking about individual small units of houses, like 400 to 600, 400 to 800 kind of square feet houses. And how do we create thermal comfort and livability for those families in this context of extreme heat risk and climate change, which sort of affects them disproportionately compared to other segments of the population?
Super, fantastic. Priyanka, how about you?
Yeah, Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thanks for waiting around for the last panel of the day. So I'm from Transition VC. So we're a VC fund backing early stage companies which are working on decarbonization technologies. The way we see this is decarbonization across mobility, industry, and buildings. And if you take the industry and buildings thesis, you could say industries typically require heating and buildings typically require cooling. And in that sense, we look at it as net zero buildings, and that's where the entire HVAC energy efficiency play comes into it for us. So I'll speak a little bit more about the kind of startups we look to back and the technologies we're bullish on for these sectors. Thanks.
Super. And lastly, Sid. Yeah. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. Hi. My name is Siddharth, and I look after the finance at a company called Smart Joules. We've been in existence for 10 years, and for the past 10 years, we've been trying to make energy saving simple, substantial, and profitable for adoption. We focus on the air conditioning system, so HVAC, predominantly, and offer our services under 3 models. One is called Joule Pays, the second one Joule Cool, and the third one is a homegrown technology called D-Joule. So we'll talk about more of this through this discussion. But company is Smart Joules, and I look after the finance.
Okay. Super. Thank you, Sid. Okay, now getting on to actually unpacking insights. Benjamin, can you elaborate a bit about what is UNEP's priorities towards heat resilience and cooling in India? Share a bit about what are the opportunities and needs, and what are you doing to catalyze these segments?
Yeah, thank you. So I think the name of the title, I'm really happy that you've brought together cooling and heat resilience. This is how we need to think of this in the kind of the new world we have, where we have massive increases in temperatures, especially in cities, and we have massive increases in cooling demand. And I think India is set to be the largest consumer of cooling by 2050, while also having the most at-risk population to heat stress. So by bringing these together, I want to thank you for that. UNEP's programs are designed in exactly that regard. We're working on the climate mitigation side of things, so energy efficiency in buildings, energy efficient appliances, refrigerant phase down, but at the same time, all of that recognizing that we need all of these things actually for adaptation to heat. And if it's the shading on a affordable housing, or if it's a rural pack house to protect them from climate-induced impacts on the food system, we've framed our whole program around these, and we're working with the ministries on both sides. So we support the Ministry of Environment, which is our nodal ministry, and they have the India Cooling Action Plan, which has laid out the priorities for the country and recommendations. We're also working with ministries like Ministry of Housing, Urban Affairs, National Disaster Management Authority, and others to show that this is actually a very complicated space that needs action in multiple policy areas to align at the same time. And to also keep in mind that cooling is no longer a luxury. Cooling is actually something which, if you're in affordable housing in the middle of Mumbai, or if you're in a rural area in Nagpur, you have a real need for cooling. And cooling is not just air conditioning. Cooling is the whole hierarchy. It's a cool area outside your home. It's the passive cooling on your home. It's the fans and the low energy use cooling, and it's air conditioning. And that hierarchy is what we really want to get across as well. And partly why I'm here today is to make the case that we have a huge finance need in all of those areas. And it's not just the massive market that there is for air conditioning we need to talk about. It's the massive market that there is for improving buildings. It's the massive market there is for improving neighborhoods as well. And cold chains. India needs to go from 500 pack houses to 125,000 pack houses in the space of 20 years. It's a massive increase in investment needed. So we typically work on national policy and its subnational policy implementation. We're working with 8 different states on all these different cooling areas, and with 5 central ministries, and trying to crack the policy implementation side and unlocking finance, and whether that's finance from the public sector, which is sitting there and not getting deployed, or getting deployed on projects like we visited some affordable housing recently in Chennai, projects that don't have a cool roof, don't have a shading. These are not expensive projects, expensive interventions. So there's that nudge of public finance, and then there's the effort to try to unlock private capital and help it to flow. And that's where things like PPPs, but also trying to get the regulations that the private sector also is demanding, and proof of concepts that let them scale. So that's the whole gamut of where we're focused, I can say.
As a person from Chennai, I'm really glad you're doing something about it there. We really need it. Priyanka, could you share a bit more about Transition VC's thesis, specifically on what's the conviction you have around cooling segments and focus areas there?
So I'll break the thesis on net zero buildings into two parts, which is the commercial and residential, bits. So there's cooling for like space cooling as well as commercial cooling for refrigeration. So in this, if you see in India, residential energy consumption actually accounts for more than commercial energy consumption in building space. So in the residential energy consumption, most of it is going towards space cooling. So, fans and HVAC would be a large part of it, and then the rest is for refrigeration. So the incentive for residential, individual units to look at energy savings is right now not so much as we would hope for it to be, because time of day pricing was supposed to come to residential units as well. This is still on the way. So once this kicks in, there's definitely going to be a lot of demand around this thesis. So we think anything in energy efficiency in the HVAC units, so whether this is more innovative compressors, better refrigeration technologies, looking at solid state refrigeration or sustainable refrigerants, chiller technologies, heat exchangers, air handling units, innovative ventilation ducts as well. So this is anything which can be retrofitted easily into existing systems is where we'd bet our, on that technology innovation. And coming to new building units, even in terms of building glazing and other kind of building materials used to deflect heat is something we'd look at. On the commercial side, we see data centers is going to be a big opportunity for us, data center cooling in particular for the servers. So in this, one standout technology is the immersive cooling, which is something we're looking forward to seeing what the innovations in India are coming out of. I also want to talk briefly about the industrial heating component, because cooling and heating are two same sides of the coin. And I think, like Benjamin spoke about, we have these urban heat islands being created because of industrial heat release. So we're also looking at technologies which can recover waste heat and be used in the industrial process again. So again, refrigeration is part of a lot of industrial processes. This creates heat. Can this heat and wastewater be condensed into to give you more efficient refrigeration and to reuse this heat in the industrial process? So that's also on reducing heat, on the heat resilience thesis for us.
Okay, super. Now that's I think it's pretty amazing to hear, especially an early stage fund having backing solutions which I think have a very near-term deployment cycle. So, and we know, like with the gaps that we talk about cooling and especially industrial heating, I'm really glad you brought out that point. It shows just that a universe is just that much more wider. Sid, over to you as an entrepreneur who's been in the space for so long. Smart Joules, I will say, has been pioneering cooling as a service. Can you cover a bit about the Smart Joules journey to being a cooling as a service play? How do you deliver this, and how have you seen basically market response changing towards what you're offering?
Sure. Thank you. So journey has been pretty long. Cooling as a service is only about maybe 3.5 years old. To start with, back in 2015, we started with the idea that energy efficiency is actually extremely profitable, and the savings that you can make from efficiency should more than pay for any retrofits that you're paying for in the buildings. With this simple idea, we started with offering 5 to 10 year contracts with commercial buildings back in 2015. Simply saying that you guys don't have to invest. We will invest whatever money needs to be invested in upgradation of your facility. You only pay if we are able to demonstrate actual savings on your energy bills. So we started this in 2015. Till now, we've done more than 50 contracts across India under the same model. Now, while executing these contracts and operating these contracts, we very quickly realized that 90% of the savings are only coming from the HVAC system and no other place in the facility. And anybody who knows HVAC system knows that there are more than 100 moving parts to deliver cooling in a large building. Managing and constantly optimizing each and every equipment through human intervention is not possible. So back in 2017, we decided to start investing in a technology which will constantly monitor the requirement of a facility and constantly optimize all parameters in the HVAC system, whether that be chiller pumps, cooling towers, AHUs, walls, damper control, open, shut, based on the temperature and humidity requirement in any facility. So between 2017 and 2021, since we had these Joule Pays contracts where we'd already invested, we went and installed this technology called D-Joule in all our facilities. In 2022, we finally started commercial operations, commercial sales of D-Joule as an independent product and not just a bundled offering with Joule Pays. In the past 2.5, 3 years, we managed to install this and sell this commercially to more than 20 facilities, not only commercial, but industrial customers as well. Now, coming to cooling as a service, D-Joule and Joule Pays are like building blocks for us for cooling as a service. What Joule Pays taught us was maximum savings are coming from HVAC. To save up to 30-40% from HVAC is possible. D-Joule gave us the ability to constantly optimize the HVAC system. Now, the gap was that in Joule Pays or in the retrofit model, we were still only changing and controlling the equipment. We were not operating and maintaining the entire HVAC plant. So we decided to go on with cooling as a service, where we will invest, design in, invest, optimize, maintain and operate the entire HVAC system for a facility. So started offering this in 2022. And from then till now, we are on our 6th contract. The duration of the contract is a little bit longer. It takes anywhere between 1 year to 18 months just to implement one facility, because these are all greenfield large projects. So this has been the journey from start till now. Regarding adoption, I would say in cooling as a service or distributed cooling as a service in India, I think we are where maybe what solar was back in 2017, where adoption had just started, but the takeoff hadn't happened.
Sure.
Now with a few companies offering cooling as a service, and actual implementation on the ground where one can go and see the benefits of this. I think adoption is, in the past 1.5 years, is tremendously increased. There's a lot of inquiries from large developers to come and showcase cooling as a service and implement in their facilities. So we are at the cusp, I would say, of almost taking off.
Fantastic. No, it's amazing to hear. I think in a segment where cooling is a known thing, but then you're able to really show some new path towards it. It's fantastic to hear that. I'm moving from, I think, large-scale commercial to low access, low-income habitats and households and homes. Cooling is not always about delivering a solution. It's a very service. It's about access. How does Habitat for Humanity, I know we had a conversation on what's the term, is it heat resilience, thermal comfort? So how does Habitat for Humanity approach and define this particular approach? And fundamentally, what are the sort of solutions that you are working with to actually deliver this for the target audience that you're focused on?
Thank you. It's been interesting to hear from all the panelists, and we've seen a host of solutions from district cooling to cooling as a service, which is solving for cooling in different spaces. I want to deep dive into housing, and just to contextualize it, for a 1.4 billion population, roughly we are talking about 280 million households, or 280 million houses broadly. And that of that universe, 80% is low income. And when I say low income, we are again talking small individual housing units. Under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana scheme, there is a vertical called beneficiary-led construction. So this is equivalent to that. Basically, a low-income family relies on a local mason to build a house. So that is the kind of unit. And when we were on field 3 years back, trying to understand what are some of the challenges these families face in their housing construction journey or in their house, one of the problems that kept surfacing is heat. And it is primarily women, children, and elderly population who spend most of the time in the house, and how they end up passing that time is by sitting outside the house or under a shade. And even then, they were not willing to invest in, say, a heat reflective paint to solve that problem, because for them, summer was 2 months. So May and June, I can pass it like that, because we are talking about a family segment that earns about 10,000 per month to 30, 40,000 per month. And to invest 15,000 on a cooling solution, I mean, there are other priorities for them. So from there to today, what was a good to have product for that family is becoming a must-have product. And we are seeing that in sales increase for heat reflective coating products. I want to contextualize it with some of the pilots that we have done. We have worked with a number of micro, small, medium enterprises that are operating in the construction chemical space. And one of the product offerings that is out there in the market is a heat reflective paint. Of all the solutions that are available, from a low-income family's perspective, this is one solution that is accessible at the last mile. Right from large paint manufacturers to MSMEs, they have this product offering in the price range of 5,000 to 8,000 rupees. And it is affordable for them. So even if you talk about a 3-year lifespan, the family spends about 5,000 in a year to reduce their indoor temperature by 2 to 6 degrees Celsius. And today, the same women that we go and see are able to spend their time inside the house. So that is the kind of solution that we are looking at, while we also look at climate mitigation, kind of new materials and innovations which can change the landscape. We are also looking at what are all those products and innovations that are already available in the market but not adopted sufficiently by these families. So we are trying to work with these kind of manufacturers and the customer segment to improve adoption of these families. I want to leave with one statistic here. How many of you have heard about this product called waterproofing? So when we started work as Terwilliger Center in India in 2018, a lot of families that we met, even masons, have not heard about waterproofing. And a lot of them had damp-proof, leaking roofs. Even a newly built house had this problem. Today, 7, 8 years later, there is universal awareness, at least in some of the markets that we have worked, and almost all new constructions use waterproofing as a default product because it's a climate adaptation solution. We are seeing frequent floods, cyclones, rains, which also affect the quality of the building. And we are expecting to see a similar curve for heat reflective coating products. 3 years back, when we heard from the field about 1,200 families we surveyed, the awareness about that such a product exists was about 50%, and adoption is about 17%. We expect this product to go through a similar trend, what waterproofing has gone through. It also shows the kind of market opportunity available, solutions available. We need to push towards adoption. I will talk a little later about how we can work with financing to also increase adoption for these families so that they improve their living conditions with such solutions available in the market.
Fantastic insights. And I think this whole point about, I think what's becoming very evident is that delivering cooling is not just about making solutions available. There is a service element to it. There is an access element to super critical. And Priyanka, I want to ask you from the perspective of your lens as a VC, early stage, focused on tech. We have many types of business models. We have the Smart Joules, which does a delivery solutions play. We have things like Octolife, which does very high efficiency technologies. What are you sort of what should entrepreneurs and builders in the space really be looking forward to? And how should they actually be approaching for building for the cooling segment from your lens and how you look at that?
Right. So from our lens, what we always look for is that, in India, the people don't want to pay a premium for decarbonization unless it's impacting their bottom line.
Yeah.
So what we count as VC scalable solutions would be typically low capex, a solution which pays for itself, like Siddharth spoke about, energy savings as a service. So if you look at the capex being incurred by the provider and then the gains are on the savings, that's something there'd be more appetite for. Apart from that, I think it's also, we have to search for the solutions along with the developers, so co-developing solutions, and how do we expand this ecosystem. So now if we look at this time of day charges kicking in, there's a huge opportunity for energy arbitrage. So moving away from exactly the cooling portion, if you look at long duration battery or energy storage, can we have an arbitrage of moving load to that service through a smart algorithm, which maybe you are developing, to make sure that the increase in load, because the requirement for cooling will only continue going up, but can the costs be saved by having alternate and swappable solutions in terms of your energy input? So these are the kind of solutions we are kind of more bullish on, which have the appetite for that is larger right now rather than thinking of more future focused solutions, because looking at payback periods being less than 2 years is typically what people want. So how can those be operationalized?
And you are seeing solutions like this emerging. It's not like you're waiting for them. They actually are
Correct. I mean, like if we've invested in something for, like, say, battery tech, that same thing has an application in long
Got it.
duration energy storage, which
Yeah.
then can be combined with a smart algorithm to have this energy arbitrage solution
Got
with the hatchback. So that's how we're integrating the entire ecosystem,
Okay,
basically.
that's actually fascinating. I mean, because I think tying together that ecosystem from disparate parts and the disparate solutions is pretty amazing to see. Benjamin, you are an author in the Cooler Future report by the UN, and I would say if anyone wants to get a perspective as a deep dive on what does finance and cooling mean, this is pretty much essential reading. And I was kind of blown away by a few of the statistics where, for example, residential cooling is expected, the financial cost and gap of residential cooling is expected to reduce, but in the SME segment, it's supposed to become increasing, which is quite, I mean, I would like you to sort of build on that and expand on that a bit more. But I think more importantly, you were talking about where you are right now in UNEP's work is around mobilizing private sector finance, public sector finance. So could you sort of unpack what are the capital needs that you're targeting, and what sort of interventions are you looking to see emerge that can capitalize on sort of like the opportunities that you are working on looking to build out?
Yeah, thanks. So, yeah, thank you for the plug of the report. So this came out last year, so it's with UNEP and IFC, and actually it was one of the first attempts to try to identify and enumerate what is the market for cooling, like, because it was really targeted to try to get people like you here, investors, impact investors, banks, interested in the cooling market. And the cooling market is not energy efficiency, it's not buildings, it was an effort to consolidate it, and I think there's $292 billion being spent every year on air conditioning units.
Wow, okay.
And that's going to grow to $600 billion by 2050. On top of that, you have everything that needs to be done on buildings. Shade, cool roof, insulation, better window glazing. So a huge, huge market. And a lot of that market is going to be in developing countries. India, I think everyone will be well aware how fast that market's already growing and is just set to explode. And I was really happy to hear about cooling as a service taking off. It's something we've been talking about at UNEP. Our Basel Agency for Sustainable Energy, which is a UNEP collaborating center, has been trying to push this because the what you can reduce at the building scale just from better management, better maintenance, better operations is huge.
Like
and then you've got
40%,
everything else. Yeah, it's just... And then we district cooling, something we've worked on for a long time, which is essentially a servitization model of cooling as well. But in terms of trying to unlock large-scale capital, one area that we've worked on for a long time is district cooling. Some of the barriers there are, project development costs. These can typically be up to 5% of a project, even 10%. So it's going into the tens, sometimes 20 crore for development costs. So we've been working with the state governments to try to understand that cost can be capitalized and paid by whoever is taking on the project, but also trying to work at the national level to unlock infrastructure funds, concessional finance that will allow district cooling to not just serve shopping malls, the high-tech, most high-tech hospitals and high-income group, but to also use district cooling to serve a broader markets within that area. And that's something that we've seen happen in district heating markets.
Yeah.
And we're trying to see, can that happen in district cooling as well? So we have a lot of interest. There's a program called AHEAD with 5 ministries under the World Bank. It's got district cooling as a vertical. We're working with them to try to unlock capital there. Another area is cold chain. We're working with FPOs who do not have the paperwork and do not have the equity to be able to invest in cold chain, but they do have an FPO. And there is some grant available, but it's that viability gap where there's a lot of risk-adverse finance that doesn't want to go near it, trying to provide things like risk guarantee funds that will allow investment into cold chain to unlock, especially at the farm gate level. India's actually got enough large-scale cold stores and has had for a number of years. It's at the rural level and the logistics up to it which is missing. And then passive cooling in buildings, and one thing I really want to hammer home is passive cooling is not just for low-income groups. It's for all income groups. And if you're sitting at your home in Delhi and you've got an AC in every room, you don't want to be running the AC 6 months a year, not just financially. Like, who wants to live in a box where you can't open windows and you don't have shade on your windows and only half the window opens and you can't let the breeze through? Like, of course, like, passive cooling should be seen as an ambition in a home and not just, you know, what we should be pushing to low-income groups. So we're looking at models that can, both on the regulation side and the incentive side, push it in the high-income group and in the low-income group in things like affordable housing, trying to unlock public funds plus. So where we're saying, okay, this building is 5% more expensive because what we're proposing, how can we cover that viability gap? Okay. And that can come from private markets, and it can also come from the government understanding, actually, this is now a priority that needs to happen. And I'll just finish with saying one thing that is giving a lot of cause for hope is a lot of states are now recognizing heat as a state-specific disaster. And you cannot build affordable homes which will not be able to withstand a heat wave. Like, it just should become, like, you cannot have people in a home that they can't sit in during a heat wave and have some modicum of cooling. So hopefully that will push more capital into things like passive cooling. But yeah, it's a massive, massive issue. And
okay. I'm glad that you're working on it, but you're also working on it in some way. So you touched upon earlier about the need for capital to deliver, you know, these sort of solutions for low-income homes. So, and I know you've done pilots and you've already started rolling it out. So could you share a bit about some really high-impact approaches that you've piloted? And also, what is really the financing need around this, and what your conversations have been so far? Because you have already started speaking to financial institutions about this.
So, as I was saying earlier, how a good-to-have product has already shifted to be a must-have product. I'm again talking from a low-income household's perspective. What we also see as potential intervention going forward is, how do you work with microfinance institutions to create specific microloan products, again, with a slightly broader scope? Can there be a climate-resilient sort of home improvement product where a small-ticket loan product can be used for either waterproofing a house to make it more durable, or to have a heat-reflective paint, or to go through an improvement, like adding a couple of windows so that there is more ventilation and airflow? So this is something that we have started having conversations. But prior to that, we also wanted to do an assessment of how the market landscape is, because there were very specific products with claims like heat-reflective paints with 6 to 10 degree Celsius temperature reduction, and then there are certain dual-purpose products which used as weatherproofing as well as heat-reflective paint. So what we are currently doing now is we are doing a study in the outskirts of Chennai where we have taken 18 products from the market and applied it in a similarly naturally ventilated homes to test the effectiveness of various products. Because before we roll out a loan product, we should be clear that are there enough equally good quality products available in the market, so that when a loan is available, the family is able to go to the market and buy a standard product. Because we did not have the confidence that not all products work very similarly. So that study, we have the interim findings a week ago, and what we see is that on an average, all products perform reasonably well with a 4 to 6 degree temperature reduction. This is ambient air temperature reduction inside a house, in a naturally ventilated house. So with that kind of, we will continue to monitor till the summer next year to check for variations. With that kind of data, we are planning to work with a microfinance institution to develop specific products that can be rolled out, which can lead to home improvement. So that is on the one side of financing, putting money on the hands of people to adopt the product. On the second side, where we see a need for not just capital, but also business advisory, is for MSMEs. We have worked with a number of MSMEs, especially construction chemicals manufacturers, who have this product. And the product is as good as the products made by large national brands such as Nippon and Asian Paints. But the biggest challenge they face is they do not have access to the shelves of hardware stores, which is dominated by the big brands. And they do not have the marketing muscle or the capital to drive that kind of marketing initiative, create mass awareness to increase adoption. So we've been piloting mechanisms like, how do you engage local social influencer and then get the message across through them, which has started generating a lot of leads for them. And then the primary sales channels for them is word of the mouth, through Mason, through a family, and through Amazon, some of the products are getting sold. We are trying to create those kind of alternate market mechanisms for them, but what would really scale is providing capital for some of these high-promising MSMEs to grow their business. Can they grow from micro to small? Can they grow from small to micro? And can they jump out of that MSME curve? Is something that we are looking at, consolidating all our learnings. We cannot work one-on-one with many firms. So today we are in the process of testing an MSME accelerator for construction chemicals manufacturers. How do we curate all these learnings and create business growth opportunities to specific mentorship? So this is something that we are working on. On top of that, they would need access to capital. And this sector promises high growth. Construction chemicals as a vertical has grown significantly. As I shared earlier, waterproofing today is universal, and we see similar climate resilient products becoming universal from a built environment standpoint. So that's another area where more capital and investment is needed.
So my big takeaway was influencers can actually be useful, which is not something I've really come across very well. Sid, over to you. You've been around for a long time. You've had to grind out for a long time, but you have raised multiple forms of debt and equity. You've raised DFI debt. You've raised from likes of Tata Capital. You've raised equity, and congratulations on your recent fundraise as well. So can you share a bit about the fundraising journey? And I think fundamentally, how have the views of both debt lenders and equity lenders changed over time, and also their expectations? How has that evolved as you have been growing and you've been engaging with them?
Well, we've been fortunate to attract debt from the very beginning. Unfortunately, not a whole lot has changed on the debt side. It's still lent on the strength of your balance sheet, whether you're profitable, you're not profitable, and it's lent on higher interest rates than what we would like. Having said that, there are lots of products out there which are available for other industries, especially if you're talking about solar or wind, where there's project level financing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, project level financing for cooling as a service or energy efficiency as a service is not available at the moment. Or if it's available, then it's prohibitively expensive. Now with I won't even blame that it's not available because market size has been extremely small. Yeah. As of now, there's a lot of interest, but there's a lot more dating happening. Everybody wants to know of, what's going on in this industry, how can we partner, if we have to do structured finance, how are we going to do structured finance, but nothing material as of now. Hopefully this changes soon. I think different forms of capital are extremely important for any organization, especially in a projects business, where you shouldn't have to be able to dilute equity every time you want to do a larger project.
Exactly.
So that's like a death for an organization. So we are looking for structured finance and project level financing instead of company level financing. On the equity side, I think there's a lot of understanding and interest in this space. There has always been a mismatch, though, between whether a VC would finance these sectors or private equity would finance these sectors. Like I mentioned earlier, implementation of a project could take anywhere between 12 to 18 months. Now, VC investment, the total time horizon is going to be 3-4 years. So you haven't done a whole lot in 3-4 years. And on the private equity side, the investment requires not that large enough in today's date where private equity is going to be excited or attracted. Everybody wants to follow and see that, okay, when you become large enough, then we would love to invest. That's where it's at. But we were fortunate enough to close a Series B last month with the very, I would say, a fantastic partner, and we look forward to growing along with them. And thankfully, they don't have a 2, 3, 4 year kind of time horizon, so it's a longer time horizon. Kind of fits with our business.
Superb. No, fantastic to hear that. And I think it is while structured finance and debt is always going to be, we're going to be always in this dance, but I think we've also heard sessions around blended finance, around how other ways in which, and we've spoken a lot about interest subvention as a potential area. So there are definitely needs that need to be bridged, and if any lenders out here need success stories, please meet this man. He's been here for a while.
Completely. Because, see, to work with large corporates in India means that their cost of capital is always lower than our
Absolutely.
cost of capital.
Yeah.
Now, to bridge this gap in their debt cost and our debt cost, somewhere efficiency revenue has to be attributed towards interest rate subvention, which we are doing at our level. But if you have to grow exponentially, if the market has to increase, if you are able to match the interest rates available to large corporates, while offering this service. So small company like Smart Joules offering cooling as a service to Reliance, going and saying, hello, I'm going to charge you 12% interest or 14% interest. Then it's a non-starter to begin with.
Yeah.
So with government intervention, with the support from organizations like where Benjamin comes from, it would really expand the cooling as a service market. If you were to say, okay, a like-to-like comparison, you were to invest, you would be paying 8%. We are investing, we are paying 8%.
Exactly.
So there's no loss to you over there. So it would really help in cooling as a service take off.
Okay, no, that's fantastic. Really good to hear that. So we're coming to the end of our session, but I think as a last question, and let's start with you, Priyanka. I think it's a two-parter. The first is, as an investor, how do you look at this sector that you have defined? And I think I really like your definition of including other areas like industrial heat and cooling. What are areas that you feel are untapped or high opportunity going further down? And what is one thing perhaps which is making you very bullish about it, and one thing that you feel is a barrier that needs to be overcome?
Right. So, in our experience, we started our sector thesis looking at mobility industry and clean net zero buildings, and we've seen that it's easiest to back startups. Like, so wherever government policy is, capital follows. So where there's a clear incentive structure, where there's a clear payback cycle, or clear penalties on industry to not adopt a particular solution, those are the kind of startups become the most backable. So I think in terms of what we're seeing right now, we find like mobility has taken off. It's already reached there. Industrial decarbonization is something we are seeing is now like people are turning their heads towards. Some because of energy efficiency, and some also because of CBAM and different ESG targets kicking in. That's helping these kind of industrial decarbonization companies to pick up. But we're kind of expanding our thesis. So we're looking at a radio frequency mesh-based wireless communications device, which will enable smart metering, which will enable energy efficiency. With data centers, we're looking at top of rack switch, which enables various servers to share their compute memory and usage.
Okay. Wow.
This will increase energy efficiency. So I think the idea is now that yes, there's conventional decarbonization technologies exist. It's easier for VCs to back those, easier to back a known technology. So kind of going out of the box and seeing what are the value chain components which can really boost energy efficiency and add on to this. Those are the low valuation entry points you want to come in at, because this is something which will be an add-on tool which will be able to be absorbed by a larger company. I think also another interesting point we're seeing is a lot of corporate venture capital is looking to back synergetic solutions.
Okay.
So that's another source of a co-investor coming in with us to kind of strengthen that proposition. So this is also something we're tapping into, like what are the startup ideas or what are the new technologies existing corporates need. Go back a startup in that that vertical, and then get them on board to give them both the capital and the business development pipeline, honestly.
Okay. Super. No, that I really like that. I think that co-financing and catalytic capital has been a big part of the conversation. So I think any way that we can actually draw on more capital really offers a lot. Okay, Benjamin. So again, last remarks, add your last remarks as part of this, but one thing I want to understand is UNEP does work from a global perspective. Are there a couple of examples that has been happening globally that you think we should be adopting in India, which will help to scale the priorities that we really need to be addressing around this whole heat resilience and cooling space?
Yeah, I mean, one area is that we need to, and like I was trying to say, cooling is more than just air conditioning. We need to start thinking in sort of packaged approaches. So whether it's district cooling projects that are also going on to the consumer side and working with them to help reduce how much cooling they need, or cooling as a service operators that also say, well, you know, you've got a glass facade. Why don't you put a shade on that? Like, so we need to think in packages, and that's something, even at the affordable housing level, we should be doing. People have an ambition to, you know, they want to have fans, or one day they will have an air conditioner. And everything we're talking about, like whether it's cool roof, shading, better ventilation, is reducing the future energy bills and the future capacity of cooling equipment they'll need. So thinking in that packaged approach, and that's happening in many countries. It's happened in the heating sector for decades in the global north. And then as like a kind of closing thing that I think we really need to think on is the equity issue here. There will be millions of people in India that will not have air conditioning in 2050. And the temperatures that they'll be facing are just, you know, out of this world. We're already seeing in the cities where we're assessing urban heat island, +5, +6 degrees Celsius at night. And air conditioning that is getting installed is making that worse. So a study we did with SEPT in Chennai shows that if all of the commercial buildings and 75% of the residential buildings could take up the minimum levels of the building energy code, we can lower the temperature by 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius for the city.
Prasanna and I would really love that for sure.
So we need to, as we're talking about all of this, think that, okay, we are doing this at the upper end with the higher income groups because we need to be helping the lower income groups to have a cooler city and to, you know, one day, you know, be able to actually have protection from heat waves and these things.
No, thank you. It's a fantastic point. Prasanna, similarly, Habitat for Humanity works globally. You work in the global south in a lot of low-income emerging areas. What are some impactful approaches that you may have identified that we should be bringing here? It could be a policy intervention, doesn't have to be a solution-based intervention, but something that we can scale. This whole, I think, equity question is a really fantastic point Benjamin brought up, and also include your closing remarks as part of that.
Yeah, thank you for that. I just wanted to pick on that. So I think one of the greatest promises that we see is measures towards passive cooling, and of which the paints is one of the solutions. So we are also exploring ways to take architectural services down market, because a lot of houses are built with mason. I mean, not just the individual houses, even if you take a look at the multi-storied buildings, can we be more intentional in terms of designing those spaces for more ventilation and more airflow, combined with use of materials that are more insulating in nature? So that is one that we see. And second is, this is not just an India problem, it's a problem across the global south. And wherever we work, be it Southeast Asia or Latin America or Africa, heat and thermal comfort is a problem that we are trying to tackle through multiple interventions. In Kenya, we have this approach of healthy housing, where we started off with vector-proofing the house through screens that are, that prevent mosquito entry. But combined with that, we tried ventilation and eaves built into that house. The unintended benefit that we saw was that thermal comfort increased significantly for those families. So again, we've tested various measures like that, and going with the theme of this conference also, how can India be a leader? Again, when we've been exchanging learnings across geographies, we also found that some of these heat reflective paints are not available in many of the global south countries. And India has an opportunity to also produce and export such products, creating more opportunity for businesses here, at the same time solving problems in the global south, specifically with these kind of problems and solutions that are affordable to this target segment that we are talking about.
Super. No, the fantastic points. I really resonated with that really well. And Siddharth, we will have the pleasure of you closing up this session with your closing remarks. But I think what will be interesting is for you to also give a perspective on what are future opportunity segments you are seeing from the cooling as a service space, because I think the potential that can offer is really immense and significant. And if you had to cast 5-10 years, where do you see what Smart Joules could be basically delivering over that time?
Sure. Well, firstly, I'd like to say that both what Benjamin and Prasanna are saying absolutely true. The first step is reducing the load, whether it's from shading, whether reflective films, whether the reflective paints. You've got better airflow in the buildings. You've got more green areas. Reduced use of glass. Multiple things can be done to the building to start with to reduce the requirement of air conditioning to begin with. The post that is where we come in. There is always going to be an air conditioning load requirement in any facility that you work with, whether that's industrial, whether that's commercial. There are extremely large cooling loads that are coming up. The entire world is looking at the demand that's expected to come out of India by 2050. When you talk about the industrial sector, we're talking about India being the pharmaceutical capital for the world, right? Like the pharmaceutical factory for the world. Now, guess what? Pharmaceutical has extremely heavy air conditioning loads. When you talk about electronics manufacturing, like I was amazed to visit a few of these factories, and the typical district cooling plants are 20, 30,000 tons, 40,000 tons. This each factory's load is more than that. When you like one 5 gigawatt factory would have 40,000 tons of cooling installed. Right. Those are, and what is the government of India doing is promoting electronics manufacturing. So guess what? What's happening in the coming 1 decade or 2 decades? Your loads are going to explode. When you talk about commercial buildings, everybody talks about how 70% of India is still not built. Yeah. We hardly have any built spaces. The total air conditioning or HVAC installation in India is a couple of million tons, and 2 million tons, and they're talking about installation 3.7 million tons on an annual basis. Wow. Starting 2040. Okay. So the demand is definitely going to explode. The scale. Yeah. It's gonna, yeah. We have been present in the commercial building sector, and we've made inroads into industrial, pharma and electronics both. And I think this is where we are going to be for the foreseeable future. Like Chi mentioned, that heating is just the flip side of cooling. So our next approach is, along with cooling, to do heating services. It's exactly the same thing: one generation point, distribution, and then varied and distributed uses throughout an industry or a factory. So if you were to ask me 10 years out, what would we be doing? We'd be in industry and commercial buildings on the cooling sector, and also in industry on the heating sector, offering similar services to cooling, like for the heating side as well.
Super. Thank you so much. And I think with that, we will close the session. Thank you, Girish. Thank you, Ranjana, and the IIC team for everything. And thank you, everyone, for being here. Yep.
I would like to thank all the panel members for this truly insightful discussion. You helped us see how cooling can evolve from a development challenge to an investment opportunity, one that strengthens resilience, drives innovation, and real impact on the ground. A big thank you once again to each one of you for sharing your experience, your ideas, and your optimism of what lies ahead.